Boston has entered the chat. You have entered the chat, and Adam Kaufman has entered the chat.
Hey.
He's in studio with us, hour two, alongside Casey Hudson. I'm Keegan Stiefel, and we have another guest. Greg Auman from Fox Sports is joining us. We're going to talk a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but most importantly, is Mike Evans going to be a Patriot? I think that's the question that we all have.
Obviously. Where else would he go?
Yeah, well, maybe just back to Tampa where he's been his entire career. So let's bring in Greg. We're going to talk a little bit of Mike Evans. I think just to start off, you've been around this guy for a very long time. What do you see the next few months looking like for him in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big decision. He spent his whole career here in Tampa. My instinct, my gut right now says he probably finishes in Tampa, but there's definitely a window where, you know, if the Bucs don't come at him with the right offer, if he gets a compelling offer from somewhere else where he thinks he has a chance to, you know, make a run at another ring, I think that would probably be the most compelling thing if he thought there was another team that gave him a better chance to go out as a champ. Otherwise, I think he's probably staying in Tampa.
Building upon that, I mean, what would it take ultimately for the Patriots, another team, to entice him to leave Tampa? What does that offer look like, do you think? Or, you know, the potential lowball situation on the part of the hometown team where, like you said, he's been for over a decade.
Yeah, like I mean, the Bucs would have to almost mishandle it to create a situation that would make him want to leave. I don't know what they're committed to in terms of money. I mean, Mike made about $46 million in the last 2 years. You'd think kind of normal diminishing returns would probably get a little less than that, just given that he's 2 years older, coming off an injury. But I don't know what the Bucs are willing to pay. And if you look at like valuations, like people in my business, some people think he's worth $25 million a year. Some people think he's worth $13 million a year. So I do think New England has two things that he would want. Both, obviously, the success they just had would make him feel like he has a real chance to win a championship. And I think they have a legit need at receiver. I think they could use, whether Diggs is back or not, I think this is a team that could use a guy that, you know, can be a red zone threat and be a double-digit touchdown, a top target for Drake May, something they probably haven't had necessarily, you know, really in recent years, I would say.
Everyone had me at red zone, but they call me biased up here, Greg, because obviously I covered the Bucs for years down south. But I'm curious because, you know, as we would know, Mike Evans has never made his career about money. He's taken a number of sweetheart deals to make sure the team comes first so that they could compete. So where do you feel like the margin of negotiation kind of lands here in terms of his future with Tampa Bay or him potentially finishing elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't really know that it's about money. I mean, I think he's the highest paid Buck in the franchise history, like $154 million, $40 million more than anybody else has ever made in the franchise. So I think he wants to feel respected. You know, I think having Baker Mayfield back, having an offensive coordinator with some continuity that means he's not learning a new system, those are the things that are probably most important. You know, I think that the Bucs disappointed last year. I mean, I think for them to finish 8-9, to lose 7 of their last 9, you know, I think that's something where he has to make sure he's confident in his team. But again, Mike made it through some lean years here. I think he missed the playoffs his first 6 years in the NFL. So he's been through that before. I just think he wants to end his NFL career on an up note and with a team that gives him a chance to go out, at least with a deep playoff run.
As it relates to the Patriots, you mentioned Stephon Diggs. I think that's the biggest story around here, or it will be over the coming weeks. Obviously, he has some off-the-field issues that he'll be dealing with, but as a whole, with the Patriots and what their offseason looks like, dealing with Stephon Diggs in general, I think, is the biggest question that they have. What does the rest of the league view this situation as? From a national standpoint, everybody knows who Stephon Diggs is, but specifically coming off a season where he played well, coming off of a torn ACL, but also had some maybe distraction issues come to the forefront at the worst possible time. Nationally, what does the rest of the league view this situation as?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the country, but I mean, from my perspective, we did a story just looking at 25 potential salary cap cuts and had Diggs in there. I mean, it's one of those where, you know, he's due to make $21 million. I think his production, you know, you look at what he did down the stretch in the playoffs. I mean, I think the entire offense, you know, kind of grinded to a halt at some points there, but I think he was part of that. So I think, you know, if you're going to pay somebody $20 million a year, that's when you expect them to step up and not fade and not, I forget what his number was, I think 111 yards in the playoffs in 4 games. So they have an out if they want it. If there's another receiver they like more, you know, there aren't a lot of bank-breaking receivers this year once you accept that George Pickens is probably getting the tag and staying in Dallas. So what they would save if they moved on from Stephon Diggs isn't much different from what they would pay an Alec Pierce or, you know, potentially If the Colts let go of Pittman, you'd have a receiver there. There's other receivers they can go get that might be younger, that might be more productive. When I watched that team, that felt like something that would be an area they could upgrade. I think they have some cap space. They can probably create a little bit more. If you were thinking about the things that they might look to make them a better team, as much progress as they made a year ago to go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl, they want to be better again. And I think having a better downfield presence, having more consistent play from a number 1 receiver might be a way to do that.
With the Patriots' success this past season, I know it surprised everybody. They overachieved, of course, the easy schedule, on and on. But do you think between Mike Vrabel, obviously an MVP runner-up, and Drake May, they've become a destination for potential free agents?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think probably not to the way they were, in the dynasty days at all, but I think they've erased whatever negatives were with them when they were winning 4 games and going through coaches. I think you have to think of them as a team the guys want to play for on both sides of the ball. I mean, the defense was such a huge part of why they got to the Super Bowl. And you have a runner-up at MVP. I mean, I know the offense struggled in the playoffs, but you go back to what they did in the regular season. I think Josh McDaniels did a great job taking Drake May from his rookie year, which was promising, to arguably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and they'll want to build on that. I think to have both running backs back, to have kind of the core of this team back. I mean, they don't have that many free agents. You think about guys like Chason, guys like Hawkins, Austin Hooper. They're not losing core players. I mean, they have a chance to go into this year with a better core and still a fairly young team. It's just a matter of how they handle, a first-place schedule and facing tougher teams. I think they go to Seattle. I think they have the Jaguars. Teams that are also on the rise, that'll make it. They could be a better team next year and manage to finish with a worse record just because of the schedule they have to play.
All right, well, one of the conversations that we're having here in terms of this team getting better is protecting Drake May. And with your extensive experience in the NFL, especially covering a Tampa team that did the musical chairs on the offensive line and went by the name of versatility being key, we're kind of seeing that hinder some of these offensive linemen's performances. And we got word weeks ago that they're going to stick with Will Campbell being a left tackle, even though that's not his natural performance. How do you think that something like that can either hinder or eventually help a team like this? Because earlier, Keegan and I were talking about the fact that maybe it's just really adding confidence to a player by saying, I see something in you, you have the capability, we're going to keep you here, but what's that runway look like to play out this experiment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Elliot Wolf talked today and the rest of the media and was asked a bunch about Jared, about having 2 rookie linemen, what they did to kind of weather that storm this year. And he continues to be very supportive, high praise for Will Campbell. This is a top 5 overall draft pick that they believe in. I think physically, I think Wolf talked about how, didn't necessarily have the lower body strength when he came back from injury, and that probably was a part of his late season struggles. But I think, you think about the change in year 2 for Drake May and how much better he got. I don't even think you expect that of these 2 offensive linemen, but they can just look less like rookies and get their bearings and get settled in as offensive linemen in the NFL. There's definitely a lot of room for growth there. This is a team, you think about the window to have a rookie quarterback where it's inexpensive. It's also nice to have 2 starting offensive linemen on rookie deals. I mean, those are $20 million positions in the NFL now. So the next 3 years with those 3, that's another opportunity where you have key positions addressed inexpensively, and that allows you to hit other positions, spend more in free agency as a result. So I think it's a great thing for them to have those things, I don't want to say answered or covered, but in a position where they're confident that these guys can grow as the team does in the next few years.
Given their confidence on that side of the line, it opens up an opportunity for them to really make a play on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they didn't get the pass rush production that they would have hoped for. They essentially changed the entire defense toward the latter half of the year. They were blitzing a lot more. They were bringing pressure from the second level, and that covered up some of the deficiencies that they had, but it's not something that they're going to be able to do moving forward. How do you see them addressing their need, specifically on the edge, to produce against opposing quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know that they'll hit. I mean, there's some really big names in free agency in terms of Trey Hendrickson, or, I think everybody thinks their team's going to trade for Max Crosby. It certainly sounded today like Vegas, like the Raiders want to keep him. But I think there's a second tier in terms of guys that are starters, guys that are from good teams, guys that can be better on their second deal than they were on their first deal, that aren't break the bank $25 million pass rushers. They're probably $15 million or $12 million a year pass rushers. And I think, for all the reasons you mentioned, I think New England will be a good place. I mean, if you're a defensive player, the chance to play for Mike Vrabel, to be a part of that defense, I think it didn't show in the Super Bowl, but in the first 3 games of the playoffs, that was basically the best Patriots postseason defense they'd ever had. I think it was 29 points they gave up in the first 3 games. And if you have a chance to join that, I mean, I think they'll have, again, I mean, Chaseon's a guy that, again, they might bring him back and it'll cost a lot more to keep him. But I think that's a position they could upgrade and use just the cap space they already have. I mean, they have the room to bring in somebody big, and that's a position where you could do that, and maybe it makes a difference in 26 for them.
Greg, before we let you go, I want to bring it back to wide receiver. I agree with you. In all likelihood, Mike Evans is back in Tampa. I don't happen to believe that Stephon Diggs is going to be here for year 2 in New England. So that opens up, who's it going to be? Everybody, to the same degree people want to talk about Max Crosby, everybody wants to talk about A.J. Brown, and is he out of Philadelphia? Seems like the Eagles are not exactly rolling out the red carpet to make sure things work out and he comes on back happily. Seems disgruntled. Do you think he lands elsewhere? And what's the likelihood of a reunion with Mike Vrabel?
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, it's one of those where I think, Philadelphia has to make sure they have him covered, and that I didn't think they had great receiver depth last year when they had A.J. Brown. So if you trade him away, it's I think there's one guy there, and that's about it. So, this is a spring where they could bring in another receiver. They could be involved in adding a receiver. I think Romeo Doubs, was a guy I thought might go their way as a less expensive replacement if they moved on from A.J. Brown. I don't think it would cost a ton from a draft capital standpoint. I mean, I think everybody knows there's some friction there. So no, that's an option. I mean, that's kind of like you said, that's the Max Crosby, that's the brass ring, that's bringing in a guy who's a Pro Bowl, 1,000-yard, 10-touchdown type. But if you're trying to take your team, to the next level, and then obviously they took a huge leap forward this past year. If you're trying to win a championship and not just get to a Super Bowl, those are the kind of moves you make. So it's hard to rule anything out. There'll be good receivers, number 1 receivers that are either available, in free agency. There'll be cuts made here in terms of guys like Calvin Ridley, other receivers that'll be newly available as teams make the cuts to get under the cap here in the next week or 2.
Greg Auman, Fox Sports NFL writer. We appreciate all the insight. Wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line. We pretty much got it all covered here today.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I think overall, just from everything that we saw there or heard there, the Patriots have so many different things that they can address, but none of them feel like they're urgent or as urgent as...
You can't really pick the priority.
Yeah, it's do you want to go get edge help? Do you want to make a decision on the offensive line? They've told us that they don't. Wide receiver, are you going to cut ties with Stephon Diggs and try to go find somebody to replace him? It's kind of a pick your poison situation. Well, yes, correct. I think we all agree.
Yes, they are.
But it's a little bit of a pick your poison situation. What are you going to focus on this offseason? Because you can't do it all. They have a good amount of money. I think they'll open up more if they get rid of Stephon Diggs.
Sure.
Christian Barmore, another guy we've talked about maybe parting ways with.
True.
You can open up a lot of money, but as things currently stand, you have to pick one and you have to focus on it for now.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are only, let's be honest, there are some talented players on this roster, but there are only 2 stud players, one on each side of the ball. It's Drake May, obviously, and it's Christian Gonzalez. And Gonzalez, who, let's remember, is due for a new contract. And I think they're going to pay him, but we're talking about, maybe breaking the bank in terms of setting the market, resetting the market, north of $30 million a year on a new deal. Now, I know that's not all coming out of the cap, the way they can massage it, obviously, in bonuses and incentives and things along those lines, but he's going to get paid. He's going to get his money. So after that, you're dealing with, okay, to your point, what's left? I think there are priorities. Now, there are holes all over the roster in spite of what we just saw in terms of a 17-win season. There are just a litany of areas that they need to address, but I do think you can rank them. And as much as we believe, okay, offensive line needs to be improved, hey, you could use a reliable secondary option at tight end. Certainly wide receiver, you got to address that as Booty getting a new deal. It starts on the edge for me. It absolutely starts on the edge. We've seen the model in the playoffs. We saw the way that the Eagles terrorized Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Yep. And you know what? Sam Darnold, it wasn't him that beat you. It was that defensive line terrorizing Drake May and that offensive line. It starts on the edge. They need to go out and get pass rushers.